afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Secret Sunday session today. Today, I am quite fortunate to be joined by Mark Forbes from End.ED, as well as the founder of the House of Hope, which is a big game changer in the space of eating disorders because he was one of the founders of the first residential eating disorder house in Australia, which is something that, if you know a lot about the eating disorder space, is massive because we haven't had that support for many, many years. And I know I am one story, but there are many out there. And I want to welcome you onto the podcast today, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure, Ashley. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and I think first off, I know a lot about your story and I know your why for being here and for fighting in this space. For a lot of us, it is really hard to continue to fight and persevere and be consistent. But for you, what is your why, and why did you start your journey in really fighting in this eating disorder space?
Yes, well, we started our charity 7 years ago. We have two daughters between us. They're not related. One's from my first marriage and the other is from my wife's first marriage. But my eldest daughter developed bulimia at 16. She's now 42. And at that stage, of course, back then I had no idea whatsoever what it was. And I obviously didn't handle it well. And we did our best, but it sort of persevered. But then when I met Gay, she had a little 5-year-old with her, and we ended up marrying, and the eating disorder reared its head at the age of 14 in Gay's youngest, and I just went, okay, here's the universe saying I didn't do anything the first time around. Here's my second go. You better get off your butt and do something, So I've been in business all my life, so I'm all about, if we're going to do it, it's boots and all, let's jump in and go. And then my wife came home from we were on the sunny coast, and we come home from a support group run for a 6 weeks course by a Brisbane organisation up on the sunny coast. And that finished. And then she came home and said, well, that was great. I met a lot of great people, but what do we do now? What do you think about opening up our house every second Wednesday to parents and carers, ones that I just met through this 6-week course? I went, great, let's do that. And that was the start of the journey, really, as to moving forward.
I love that, just opening up your home to anyone that you could relate with that pain that they were going through. I mean, I want to take you back to those first moments with your first daughter when you realized she was diagnosed. Do you remember what your first thought was? And did you even know what bulimia was or what eating disorders were?
Had no concept whatsoever. And the first thing I knew was changing in diets, what she wanted to eat at the table. And I was old school, like, no, you got to eat your vegetables, you got to eat this, got to eat that. And I found out later she was hiding them in the milk and things like that. But then, I did hear heard her in the shower, vomiting quite often. And obviously at the time I said to my wife at the time, like, I'm not sure what's happening here. And she said, yeah, I think it's anxiety, pressure at school, and she's not reacting well to that. And it just makes her feel a bit ill. And to me, that sort of made sense at the time. And I just sort of ran with that. And then it was only I realised later that how deeply embedded it was starting to become. And then I spoke to her at length, and she admitted that one of her boyfriends at the time pinched her hip and said, oh, you're putting on a bit of weight here, like basically saying, if you don't do something about it, you're not my girl. And of course that, spun her out severely. So it was a combination of things that was there, but it was all these triggers that really brought it together. And then when I did found out more about it, I actually took it to Footprints of Angels, that house that was set up by Bronte in Brisbane. So I took her there initially. She found that too confronting and wasn't ready. So then I found a psychologist, and she related to the psychologist, and that was the start of feeling supported. But yeah, it's been a long journey ever since then. But I can say now she's in a good place. But it's taken a very, very long time.
I mean, that's amazing to hear. Congratulations on that journey and that she's now in a good place. But I mean, you know, we being in this space, and I know even personally when my father got involved with my treatment, he came in with the mindset of black and white. It's just, you just got to eat the food.
Yeah.
How did you, as a male figure in this space, because it is quite stereotypical that males are that black and white personality, how did you change that mindset and step into a carer's role?
Oh, look, I think I started to. I can relate to your father in as much as males are very. It's a problem. I can fix it. We got to fix it. What are we going to need to do? Let's get it done. You know, and I hear so many males today go, right. I see my child with this problem. I'm going to fix this thing. I'm going to knock it on the head within a couple of weeks. It'll be right. I'll just look at it and go, hang on to that.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck with that. But yeah, back then, I think I realised that it was more than just a want to have a better body shape. It was that deeply embedded in her that it became part of her psyche. That I realised then that there was a lot more to it. But you know, still, I knew nothing then. It was only my second time around with Georgia, my wife's daughter, when she developed it at 14, that I really started to get a better understanding and really put my head into it to go, well, okay, if we're going to do this, I need to know a lot more about it. And then Gay helped a lot because she's the researcher. So, yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing as well. You look at treatment and a lot of people think it's a quick fix. They don't think eating disorders need a lengthy period of time, a lengthy recovery period. So they think that, you know, once someone gets over their diet mentality or once they're treated in a hospital, that it just gets better. They just heal. How did you overcome that? And how do you then share that to other people that this is not an overnight stay in a facility and then they come back and they're cured? This is a long period of time and this takes commitment and this takes sacrifices. How do you share that with families that have no idea what an eating disorder and what treatment looks like?
Yeah, look, I take it because it's sort of my number on the website. So I feel that a number of calls, like, oh, I've got 3 different families today reaching out for help. My wife's handling one and I'm handling the other 2, and our team of girls are looking after them as well. And or we get all these emails. But I really sound it out on the person who's ringing, because you really get an understanding of where they're at themselves with it. And if they're totally new to it, you don't want to throw them straight into the horror journey. You want to slowly, let them work it out. But it really depends where they're coming from. If they're coming from a level where they've got a fair understanding on it, but still don't know where it's going to go, then I feel comfortable enough to go to them, well, look, but this won't be fixed within a few months. You're going to have to change your lifestyle and work with this, and you're going to have to work out how that's going to happen. We can walk alongside you and be with you as lived experience parents or as our team of lived experience coaches. But yeah, it's a journey. It certainly is a journey. But I do take it individually as each person contacts us to see where they're at with it.
How did you get over that? How did you come to the terms that you had to make sacrifices and that this treatment process was going to be not just a quick fix, it was going to take a while?
Yeah, look, I'm always one, like I said before, to jump in boots and all. It's either all or nothing. So to me, it then didn't become a question as what am I doing with my life? It is our life. This is our life, and this is what we do. So I had no problem in then realizing that this is going to define the rest of our life, and the more we can understand it, the more we can help others on their journey. So it doesn't even feel like a sacrifice at all. It feels like it feels humbling, actually, and enriching to be involved in so many different people's lives, and they give up their trust and their information to you, and you feel honoured by that, and it is a really rich feeling.
Yeah, I know, even working in this space, that Yeah, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. It feels
No.
like a privilege that you
Yes.
get to be that person that is that trust resource for people to really share how they're feeling and how they're struggling, in hope that you can just provide that little bit of hope for them so that they can believe that recovery is possible.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, and so we look at treatment for eating disorders, and it is quite individual. It's every case is different, and we know even eating disorders themselves are quite diverse between the different ones. But is there a similar concept that you've found in your experience that is most effective to help people with eating disorders?
I think there's a two approach there. One is helping the parents' carers, because, as you know, people think it just affects the person with the eating disorder, but it does not. As you know, it affects the entire family and people around that as well. So it's important to look after the parents and carers and support them on their journey, just as it is to support the person on their own journey with that. So to find that support and walk with them is so important. And the key is that lived experience thing, as you're quite aware. If people can understand that you can cut to the chase and get to the core of discussion, and feel comfortable with that, then that lived experience is absolutely priceless. From us talking to, as a parent, to other parents, or our lived experience girls talking to people they work with. And the key to, no matter what type of eating disorder it is, eating disorder is extremely isolating. And the eating disorder wants to have that person on their own in the corner of a room and cut everybody out. Now, if you can provide a link, a connection, and we have 44 volunteers coming to our House of Hope, and 90% of them are lived experience, and they teach yoga and Pilates and sound therapy and music and sewing and pottery. It's important to have all those modalities because you don't know what that connection is going to be for somebody. And that person may come. We've had people come to the House of Hope and don't want to get out of the car from mum and dad, but at least they're there. And then a few weeks later, they're back. They're out of the car. They've stepped into the house and they realize it's a beautiful home environment and it's warm and comforting and inviting. And then actually connecting with one of our girls, or our girls go, I don't need to know everything right now. Let's just sit and see where you're at in your journey and what excites you. What is it? Is it music? Well, let's connect there. So just, starting that, it's baby steps. It really is baby steps. But finding that connection and making them understand they're not alone. And there is support and a team.
It sounds so simple, connection.
Yeah.
What is it about connection that really, whether it's motivating or whether it's lightening or empowering these young people to really pursue recovery? Why is connection so detrimental for recovery?
Yeah, I think because the eating disorder beast, when it's in control, it's screaming even louder. When that person decides to reach out for help, that's when that voice, from our experience with our daughters and people we've supported, that voice gets louder and louder because it's getting threatened, because it's trying to jeopardize it at every step of the way. That person who wants to make a difference and wants to make a change. Our daughter used to sit beside me and go, I can't believe you can't hear these voices screaming. They're screaming at me that loud that you can't hear them. And I can't get my head around that, And for her to say that, then you go, oh my God, I'm starting to understand what it must be like to live with that 24/7. So you've got this beast trying to stop them from connecting because they don't want that, But there's this person inside is realizing that they do need that. So connection is a critical part, and it's the first step of making a difference and improving your life.
Do you believe that's where as well it becomes harder when a person with an eating disorder seeks treatment after the age of 18 because they don't have, say, that direct connection with their parents. It generally is all up to themselves.
Yeah, look, it does get, it's interesting the way the system is structured. I mean, the system, a lot of the times, like residential models or clinics or those sorts of things go, listen, we can't help you until you're 16. Now, I got a call this morning from a mother, with an 8-year-old girl, the other day, a 7-year-old boy. Now, the system is saying, yeah, wait till you're 16 and we can help you. Well, there's 8 years of this beast having hold of this person. So it's critical to grab it as soon as you recognize it. And it's wonderful these people are recognizing it at such a young age in their childhood. It's there. And it's wonderful they're reaching out. And it's great that now that there are organizations like yours and ours that they can reach out to. But yeah, it's important to get it as early as possible. And it's so good to see. And I think, our goal initially was depression is it's a table topic these days. Everybody's okay to discuss it. And when we first started End.ED, it was our mission to get eating disorders out there on the coffee table so people feel they could talk about it. So the more of that exposure happens, and that's what your organisation does as well, the more comfortable these young people are going to go, okay, well, I am not alone. There are organisations. And it's funny too, I'll get phone calls on my mobile from an unknown number, and I'll answer it or I miss it, sorry. And I'll ring back at some stage later and there'll be a parent going, hello. And I'll go, it's Mark Forbes from End.ED. Yeah. And what? I said, well, you just rang me. No, I didn't. And I get that many of them that I'm now working out it's the child who's done the research, doesn't have a phone, picks up the phone, finds my number on the website, rings me. And if I'm in a meeting or something I can't answer, hang up. And that's when I ring back. And the parents go, no, nothing going on here. But you feel like saying, oh, yes, there is.
Yeah.
But you realise, okay, you'll find out in all good time. But it's interesting, that happens too regularly for it not to be the case.
See, that gave me goosebumps and actually made me feel a bit teary, because in that sense, it's the awareness is working and the conversation is starting. But what breaks my heart is when you discussed earlier is that next step when they feel comfortable enough to reach out for help, but the system can't help them.
Yeah.
I feel like that is the gap that we're really struggling with in this space. And I don't know how to mend it, because it is, as you know, you are very, very well connected in the political space. And you've been, I feel like, screaming for ages in this space. And still we're here and still we're having this gap. Do you think it will ever change where we will have a voice in Parliament, in government, and be able to make direct changes in this space so that young people that really need help get the help that they deserve?
Yeah, look, because we've been going for 7 years, I've been fortunate enough, our local MP, Andrew Wallace, he's a patron of our charity, and one of his daughters has an eating disorder. So he used to come to our meetings, and then he used to take me to Canberra. So he got me in front of a lot of politicians and opened a lot of doors. And I've been going every budget year to be there for the budget announcement. And I remember sitting there when the LNP were in power, and would have been 2019, I think. I was there, and they were releasing the budget, and for the first time in the budget speech in Parliament, they mentioned eating disorders. And I went, there's the start. There is a start. There's the baby step right there. Here's eating disorders being mentioned publicly in the budget in Parliament. And it has improved slowly. When the LNP are in power, I managed to get in front of Greg Hunt and Malcolm Turnbull and Scott Morrison and all those guys. And they did give us $2 million to help us complete Wandinirida. So they've been pretty supportive. But unfortunately, and I was just down in Canberra 2 weeks ago for the reply to budget by Peter Dutton, and I had the opportunity to sit with the health minister's, Labor health minister's office, and we'd had a funding application with them, and I realised we're not going to get anything, unfortunately, from Labor. So we're making our own differences there on how we're going to fund ourselves through that until the LNP get back in, or until Labor find a way to fund us. But the other thing that happened there in Canberra is now we have a parliamentary committee made up of Andrew Wallace from the LNP, Zoe Daniels as an independent, and a Labor senator from New South Wales on a parliamentary committee called Voices of Hope, and that's a parliamentary committee set up for eating disorders. So that's a first, and that's a big step. It's a bit of a toothless tiger at the moment, this committee, but at least it's there, And then you've got Zoe Daniels as an independent standing on her dig, because as soon as she became an independent down in Melbourne, she had so many mothers coming to her saying, we need to do something. So there's a lot more voice, there's a lot more happening within this from at all government levels. So it is refreshing to see. It's bloody, I like to get things done quickly. And I've learned the hard way. I can't do it. I can push as hard as I can, but I've got to I've had to understand that you can't do this on a federal level. You have to, but differences are being made. So that's a beautiful thing.
And it's definitely better than where we were, as you said. Like, we would have never had that committee or even be mentioned in Parliament. So it's amazing how far we've come in that sense. As you said, like, it's just frustrating when you're in this space and you literally feel like you are screaming at a wall and there is no change being made. But I feel that if we just keep doing our thing and continuing to try and start that conversation, hopefully one day we'll get our say and we'll actually be able to implement something that can really support these families that are really struggling.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't like to make it political, but it's hard not to mention parties when you look at, well, one party supports, one doesn't. But I'm looking at it from a state point of view too. When the Labor government here has been in power for quite a while, and I've been lobbying this Labor state government for 7 years, and we unfortunately haven't been able to get a dollar. But the other party, let's say, when they were going for the election last time, they committed quite a substantial amount of funds to our charity if they'd won, and they made that public. And again, they're saying, look, if they get elected, they'll make sure there's funding for eating disorders. So it's good to know that that's coming. But in the meantime, our organisation, as I said, we employ 8 lived experience girls. We run extremely lean, so any money that comes in is purely there to employ our girls. And eight wages is a lot to find a week. So I was sitting in Canberra thinking, well, I'm not going to get anything from Labor Feds for a fair while. How are we going to plug this gap we've got? And lo and behold, I always put it out to the universe now. I wasn't a great believer in it, but now I am totally committed to put it out there.
Yeah.
Because, I was sitting in Canberra airport and I'm going, what the? And dinging up on my phone, this real estate agent sent me this link to this property up here on the Sunny Coast. And he said, mate, I reckon this is a deceased estate property. It's 10 acres. I reckon you could subdivide it. Well, we've now got an unconditional contract on that property, and we're putting an application into council. We've just mortgaged our house to get the rest of the funds to get this property. And it looks like it'll be a very good deal. So at the end of it, we're then going to donate those funds back to our charity, most of those funds, and then use the balance to seed the next development.
Wow.
So then you become a little bit more self-sufficient. But, I was sitting in Canberra airport and I'm like, what the hell am I going to do now, university? Ding, there it is. There's the link to the property. So it's great when those things happen.
Trust in the universe.
Trust in the universe. But, I mean, you can get that message from the universe too, but it's a matter of doing something with it.
Absolutely. And I mean, as like we look at the properties and Wandanera that is developed, and there is an extremely long wait list, and it is quite pricey as well,
Mm.
that sometimes a lot of people can't even afford that or wait
Right.
that long. What is
Mm.
the answer for people that are waiting and ready for treatment now when they're just put on wait lists or they don't have the money?
Yeah. And we, as you know, we built Wandanera. My wife and I lived on site there for 18 months. I was the project manager, and we built it. And then Butterfly Foundation now run it. And we've parted company there because of the price for 73,000 for 60 days. It was never going. It was always meant to be free for the first 3 years. And the model of care has changed there compared for what it was supposed to be as well. So anyway, with the House of Hope, what we're finding, because it's a 9-bedroom home on 2.7 acres, we're finding people are contacting us saying, just as you said, A, they can't afford wanting it, or B, they can't wait for a bed. What can we do? So we're finding the space being a preventative space as well, because some people are coming to us for support while they're waiting for a bed, but then finding, you know what, I don't think I need that residential. I find I can get enough support here from what you guys are doing and wrapping a team around me. I'm getting enough here that I don't need that. But the other thing too is, and this is what's so frustrating when I was talking to the federal government in Canberra, they're saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to do more residentials," and I said, "Hold on, don't you understand? Residentials alone won't do this. Residentials, A, are expensive, but B, they're 60 days. 60 days is the start of a journey. Now, unless you have houses of hope sitting alongside those residentials, and so far we're the only one in Australia, and you can't fund it, but if you just keep putting money into residentials, that's not going to fix it. But trying to get that message across is hard. They just go, no, we'll just tick the box. We've done a residential. That's great what we're doing for eating disorders. Yeah, that's great, but it's the start. There's so many people we know who have done one generator, but then gone home to what? Gone home to no support.
Yeah.
And then what happens then? The parents going, oh, great, our child's home, and they're in a lot better place. Fantastic. But it quickly unravels if you do not have the support. And this is why it's critical that they come home to a house of hope. Wherever they're going home to, Perth or Adelaide or wherever they go home to, they need something like a house of hope to wrap them in for day programs and support. It's, as you said, it's not rocket science. It's common bloody sense, but it's frustrating.
It's so frustrating because I know through my own journey is that you go to treatment facilities or you have a hospital admission and you're thrown back into the environment with all the triggers, but no support. You were sheltered and you were almost babied in your admission or your residential. You go back out into the real world with none of that. And back into society where you're faced with the things that made you create that perfect environment for an eating disorder prior with nothing. How do people expect people are supposed to come out cured and perfect and fine?
And you look at drug and alcohol rehab facilities, they've been doing this for years. They've got a drug rehab residential, say, as Wandanera, but then they have step-out homes where they help these people assimilate back to community. They don't throw them back into the fire. They help them assimilate. Now, we're only replicating that. We're not recreating anything. We're not groundbreaking with a new sort of idea. It's tried and proven, but it's groundbreaking for eating disorders. But yes, you can't have one without the other. This is where the House of Hope. That when we're building one in area, we always knew we were going to need a step out, step down, transitional support home that they can come to, and we help them back to community. And, we're so embedded in the Sunshine Coast that we can actually help them find work and jobs, because with the so many companies we work with, that they're wanting to help in that space. Some of the people we've supported are now baristas around the coast and things like that. And yeah, we're nearly ready to open up our Connection Cafe at the House of Hope. Um, yeah, which is not far away, which is fantastic. Yeah.
And that's the thing, I mean, kind of stereotypical, the name in itself, because it's a house of hope that gives young people or anyone that is going through an eating disorder the hope that they can comfortably transition back into the community. And it is something that, they're thrown back out there, and it's like sink or swim, and it's up to you what you do, with no resources, no support, as you mentioned, and no wonder they end up back in hospital. They relapse and often can lead into other eating disorders or even worse.
Yeah.
And yet this issue, we're still not seeing ways that we can change it. And it's sad when there is a solution there, you're seeing it and you're seeing it work. For people that are not aware what you do at the House of Hope, talk us a little bit through about what a day program could look like. And if people were to contact you, what does a transitional house actually look like for someone with an eating disorder?
Yeah, good question. It is, as I said, it's a beautiful 9-bedroom home on 2.7 acres, and we've turned the 2.7 acres into this peaceful park. So we've got these big rock streams, we've got yoga decks and pathways and bridges and veggie gardens and herb gardens and outdoor dining, and now the Connection Cafe. So it's a peaceful place to just sit and listen to the stream babbling, In the house itself, you walk in, you automatically feel peace and calm. And our lived experience team have decorated it. So they know what they would have liked, in that space. So we know it's right. So one end of the house, we've got 4 bedrooms. So later in the year, we'll have that as a residential. So if people are coming into state and they want to partake in our day programs, and the mum can stay there with their child for a while to partake in the program each day. But we have families already moving up from Melbourne or Melbourne or Adelaide, to be on the sunny coast to get their child to our day programs. Now, our day programs are really, as I said before, baby steps, soft and gentle. There are, come and just sit and help us prepare food, or come and sit and enjoy this Pilates class run by a lived experience recovery coach. And then we've got the other end of the house is 5 bedrooms. We've converted them, one to a massage room. So we've got a lived experience masseur. The other is allied health, now come into our space. Allied health that we trust. Psychologists and counsellors and dietitians and people we trust come to the House of Hope. So then someone can get a massage, take part in the day program of yoga, and see a psychologist as well, all in the House of Hope. Or just go and sit in the park and enjoy that space. And the idea of the Connection Cafe is, instead of parents just dropping their loved ones off and going somewhere, they're still disconnected. They're still isolated. Go over there and sit on the deck, oversee the beautiful park, get a coffee, and connect with other parents. So that's what that Connection Cafe is about.
That's beautiful. Because as you said, like a carer has such an important role of a journey with someone with an eating disorder, and often they get left behind and forgotten about because it's so focused on the person with the eating disorder, when, as we mentioned, they're so important, because without their support, it's really hard for that person to see that there is hope, or to do it all on their own. So I think that's really important. And I mean, looking at that approach, it seems very holistic, and that sometimes is stereotyped in the sense that that's not as effective, or that's treating something or anything quite softly. Why and how are you seeing that a holistic approach to treatment is actually working than, say, a medical approach?
Yeah, look, I suppose we combine both, because we do get the allied health coming in with the psychologists, and so we do combine both. And we never say that we have all the answers and this is the only way to do it. What we do, we say we're part of a team. So let's work with your GP that you're currently working with. Let's work with your psychologist, Now, and now we're getting more and more referrals from psychologists, GPs saying, I've got this client, can we work together? So, and it is combining that and communicating with all these resources working together for that person, instead of it being, no, I'm a GP, I know all the answers, and that sounds like rubbish what they do over there, and we've had that as well, as you would know. But when you can develop that respect, and professionals don't feel threatened, they go, oh, you actually just want to work with us to help our client. Yes, that's correct. So then you have that beautiful connection, that symbiotic connection of holistic and medical. And that there to us is where the secret is.
Is there any barriers in accepting people at the House of Hope?
No. What our girls do, as soon as someone emails, it comes to me, and I automatically link that person in, whether it's mum and dad or someone with eating disorder, to 3 of our girls, and they'll come back the same day with a complete overview of everything we can offer, and then follow up within a few days if they haven't heard back to see how you're going with that, and then then they'll have a conversation with that person, and depends where they're at, whether the person might say, oh, I don't feel comfortable yet to come to the House of Hope. That's all right, I'll meet you for a coffee. Let's sit down at the beach and just have a chat and get a little bit of understanding with each other, and then we can bring you into the House of Hope. Or some go, no, I'm ready, I want to go into the House of Hope. So we don't have we never turn anyone away, because that's the worst thing you can do. And we've been there ourselves and witnessed that on too many occasions.
Oh, it's awful, isn't it? At the moment, the stigmas that are in place where people that don't feel sick enough to get care is just absolutely disgusting, in all honesty. The fact that people have to get to a sick standard in order to feel validated in a system or a medical system where they're supposed to feel like they're heard is just so sad.
Yeah, I mean, you hear it so many times where parents will go, yeah, I took my child to this, and the professional says, yeah, but your child's not sick enough, like you just said. Not sick enough. What does that mean, not sick enough? And then and it's not the GP's fault either, because a lot of GPs, eating disorders, we know, takes up 1% of their training. So they're not skilled in that. They don't understand that you need to take special blood tests if someone's got an eating disorder, not your average blood test. You can look for special markers and all those sorts of things. So a lot of them aren't aware of that. They'll, and so we hit so many frustrated mums, especially. They'll just go, I just wanted to punch that GP in the nose, because here I am sitting with my child. I know in the pit of my stomach there's something going on here and there's something wrong. And we go through all the tests, and the GP, yeah, we got all the tests, come back in, sit there. No, all the tests are fine. I think, Mum, you got the problem.
You're overacting.
And Mum's going, I just want to punch this guy. Yeah. And then the eating disorder goes, yes, I've just won. Yeah. And walk out the door, and the eating disorder is more empowered than ever. And that's where a lot of damage is done.
What do people do in that instance, though, if they're going to people for help, people that are supposed to be trusted and trained in or covering so many different areas of health, and they're getting turned away, hospitals, by GPs, by specialists, and told that their child or the person that they're concerned about is not sick enough and we can't accept them for care? What do they do? They don't want to give up, but what are they left to do?
Well, my wife says, always stand your sacred ground. Do not. If you know in your gut, in your heart, that there is something wrong with your child, stand your sacred ground and go, okay, if it's in a hospital situation, your name tag, what's your name tag there? I'll just want to make note of this. You're saying, and take notes of all these conversations, all these meetings, and that's where you get empowered. And so my wife has created this list of questions that you would go in there and ask. Or you get these responses, no, that's not good enough. I want this, I want that. You have to be strong and forceful. And it's so hard when you're so worn out and worn down by this thing in the first place, and you're still unsure of what is actually going on. Is it me, or is it what is happening? And as soon as somebody who's supposed to know tells you it's your problem, you quite often just go back into your shell and go, okay, it is me. But as my wife says, stand your sacred ground and demand that better attention.
And that's what we've always said as well. Don't take, if you know within yourself that there is something not right, and even if it's just a feeling, honor that. Don't ignore that feeling. You continue to beat down walls, and you don't stop until you get the answer that you know feels right. Because you can't take no for an answer if you know there is something wrong. Because as we know, working this space, the longer that you leave it, the worse it gets and the harder it is for that person to then recover, because, you know, malnutrition starts to step in and you start to lose that cognitivity, as well as that eating disorder gets more and more empowered and feeds off that. And that is the last thing that you want.
Exactly right.
I think as well, recovery is defined in so many different ways, and it is individual for many types of people. Working in this space, what do you think recovery is defined at, and how do you know when someone is recovered?
Yeah, again, a good question. I mean, I look at our girls, the 8 girls we employ, and that's a conversation we quite often have. They would say, most of them would say that they are fully recovered, but in saying that, they're quite honest and open. If they go, listen, I've just been triggered, I need to step back for a couple of days and see my counsellor, get support, and I'll be back. And they do. I mean, the girls we've had have been there since we've started, a lot of them. One has left, and that was Millie, who started with us 6.5 years ago. She's now moved on doing her own practice, you know, as support. So that's a great natural progression of things, which is a beautiful story in itself. But yeah, even our girls will honour, and we honour that with them. And it's beautiful that they can go, I feel a bit triggered here, and I need to honour myself and respect myself and take myself out of that situation for a while. So there are different degrees, and it's a very personal, journey for sure.
Yeah, we often look at recovery as, I know even within myself, that yes, I am fully recovered to an extent, but if there is a point where I'm triggered, it's my initial coping mechanism is my eating disorder. And that is something that I have embedded in me, like someone that is triggered, but alcoholism is something that is their dominant coping mechanism. It's one of those things where you constantly have to be aware, and you constantly have to be one step ahead of yourself and be very self-aware, to the point where if you know you're triggered, as you said, you have to step back. And I don't think that's just eating disorders. I think that's anything in relation to if you're experiencing a trigger or poor mental health in general.
Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's where, you know, I feel actually very honoured to have this beautiful team of girls working for us. It is so beautiful to watch them supporting each other. And that's great too, because they work as a team. They epitomise the definition of team, because they so much look out for each other. And it's a lovely thing.
Comes back to that connection.
Totally. We're lost without it.
Absolutely. Now, lastly, I just want to say, well, thank you. Of course, this interview has been absolutely amazing, and you sharing all your insight and what you've learned on your journey and what you're continuing to do is just phenomenal in this space. And I'm grateful, and so is everyone else in this ED space. But lastly, what is your advice that you would offer to someone that is really struggling at the moment, that can't seem to find help, that keeps getting put on wait lists, can't afford places like Wandanera, but just needs some sort of relief or help for right now? What is your advice?
I think the biggest thing is just understand you're not alone. You may think, how could anybody else be going through this? You know, these voices, these actions I'm doing, how could anybody understand this? But I think if you can just feel that you're not alone, and reach out, and do it gently as you need to do. For instance, with us, and your organisation's the same, and many like us, but just research our websites and just get an understanding. And when you realise that there's so many lived experience supports there, don't hesitate. You're never judged. Mm-hmm. We always our girls talk about connecting with you where you're at in your journey. Mm-hmm. And understand there's not one thing you can say to lived experience people that is going to shock them or amaze them. It is unfortunately and fortunately just part of the journey. So never feel you're alone.
That's amazing. And I would say the same thing. There's absolutely no judgment. I feel that, we've all, people that have gone through it, have felt and experienced it all, and in all different shapes and sizes and forms. So I think that if you're really struggling, know that, you're not alone, and that there are people out there that are willing to help at no cost, are willing just to listen and to relate and provide that really supportive community for you. And I think that it's worth a shot. If you're really desperate, and if you're at the time where you feel like you're struggling and what you're doing is not working, what's reaching out to start a conversation with someone going to make it any worse? So can only make it better.
Exactly.
Amazing, Mark. Well, thank you so much for your time. And
thanks, Ashley.
Big thank you to everyone else out there for tuning in for another episode on our Secret Sunday session. We hope you all have a great afternoon, and we'll speak to you all very soon.